Hey everybody, it's Mr. Howard here for another Chapter 1 Wednesday. And this Wednesday we're reading Chapter 1 of this book called Stone Fox. You see the title right there. And this book is by John Reynolds Gardner. And we're kind of on a theme, I guess, about books about dogs. So dogs are cool, so we'll read about dogs. Why not? Also, I picked this book because it's kind of like got a wintry kind of theme, and we're entering the winter season. And this one's about some dog sled racing, and that's something you can really only do when it's like cold and there's like snow and stuff outside. So I thought that'd be a good match for if this was the kind of book you like, books about dogs, you like books about the season that we're living in. This would be a really good book for you guys. So let's go ahead and read the back of the book here. It says, Little Willie has a big job to do. When his grandfather falls ill, it is up to Willie alone to save their farm from the tax collector. Evil tax collector. But where can a 10-year-old get $500 in a hurry? Then Willie sees the poster for the National Dog Sled Race. That's right, this book's about dog sled racing, and it's about Willie needing to make a little bit of cash to help save his grandfather, and it's about a relationship of Willie and his dog called Searchlight, and the race that they have to win to help save grandfather. So if you like books with animals, if you like stories about relationships with people and animals, if you like intense stories where you have to race against the clock to save the day, this would be your kind of story. So I'm going to read chapter 1, but remember, there's something that you can be doing while I'm reading, and that is writing a little bit. So while I'm reading this chapter, if you want to add another page to your Chapter 1 Wednesday journal about books you might want to read, at the top of that paper, you could write Stone Fox by John Reynolds Gardner up here. And then on the paper, you can do whatever while you're listening to the story. You can sketch out pictures. You can write things that you're interested in, maybe questions you have, things that might want to make you read on and grab this book for yourself and read the next everything else after chapter 1. Okay, so continue your sketch note journal while I am reading chapter 1. So let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 1 is called Grandfather. One day, Grandfather couldn't get out of bed. He just lay there and stared at the ceiling and looked sad. At first, little Willie thought he was playing. Little Willie lived with his grandfather on a small potato farm in Wyoming. It was hard work living on a potato farm, but it was also a lot of fun, especially when Grandfather felt like playing. Like the time Grandfather dressed up as a scarecrow out in the garden. It took little Willie an hour to catch on. Boy, did they have a laugh. Grandfather laughed so hard he cried, and when he cried, his beard filled up with tears. Grandfather always got up real early in the morning, so early that it was still dark outside. He would make a fire. Then he would make breakfast and call little Willie. "Hurry up, or you'll be eating with the chickens," he would say. Then he would throw his head back and laugh. Once little Willie went back to sleep. When he woke up, he found his plate out in the chicken coop. It was picked clean. He never slept late again after that. That is, until this morning. For some reason, Grandfather had forgotten to call him. That's when little Willie discovered that Grandfather was still in bed. There could be only one explanation. Grandfather was playing. It was another trick. Or was it? "Get up, Grandfather," little Willie said. "I don't want to play anymore." But Grandfather didn't answer. Little Willie ran out of the house. A dog was sleeping on the front porch. "Come on, Searchlight," little Willie cried out. The dog jumped to its feet, and together they ran off down the road. Searchlight was a big black dog. She had a white spot on her forehead the size of a silver dollar. She was an old dog, actually born on the same day as little Willie, which was over 10 years ago. A mile down the road, they came to a small log cabin surrounded by tall trees. Doc Smith was sitting in a rocking chair under one of the trees, reading a book. "Doc Smith," little Willie called out. He was out of breath. "Come quick." "What seems to be the matter, Willie?" the doctor asked, continuing to read. Doc Smith had snow-white hair and wore a long black dress. Her skin was tan and her face was covered with wrinkles. "Grandfather won't answer me," little Willie said. "Probably just another trick," Doc Smith replied. "Nothing to worry about." "But he's still in bed." Doc Smith turned a page and continued to read. "How late did you two stay up last night?" "We went to bed early, real early. No singing or music or anything." Doc Smith stopped reading. "Your grandfather went to bed without playing his harmonica?" she asked. Little Willie nodded. Doc Smith shut her book and stood up. "Hitch up Rex for me, Willie," she said. "I'll get my bag." Rex was Doc Smith's horse. He was a handsome palomino. Little Willie hitched Rex to the wagon, and then they rode back to Grandfather's farm. Searchlight ran on ahead, leading the way and barking. Searchlight enjoyed a good run. Grandfather was just the same. He hadn't moved. Searchlight put her big front paws up on the bed and rested her head on Grandfather's chest. She licked his beard, which was full of tears. Doc Smith proceeded to examine Grandfather. She used just about everything in her little black bag. "What's that for?" Little Willie asked. "What are you doing now?" Here's a picture of what it looked like. You can see Searchlight here, Doc Smith, and then Willie, and then Grandfather is in bed. "Must you ask so many questions?" Doc Smith said. "Grandfather says it's good to ask questions." Doc Smith pulled a long silver object from her doctor's bag. "What's that for?" Little Willie asked. "Hush!" "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry." When Doc Smith had finished her examination, she put everything back into her little black bag. Then she walked over to the window and looked out at the field of potatoes. After a moment, she asked, "How's the crop this year, Willie?" "Grandfather says it's the best ever." Doc Smith rubbed her wrinkled face. "What's wrong with him?" Little Willie asked. "Do you owe anybody money?" she asked. "No," Little Willie answered. "What's wrong? Why won't you tell me what's wrong?" "That's just it," she said. "There is nothing wrong with him." "You mean he's not sick?" "Medically, he's as healthy as an ox. Could live to be 100 if he wanted to." "I don't understand," Little Willie said. Doc Smith took a deep breath, and then she began. "It happens when a person gives up on life, for whatever reason, starts up here in the mind first, then it spreads to the body. It's a real sickness, all right, and there's no cure except in the person's own mind. I'm sorry, child, but it appears that your grandfather just doesn't want to live anymore." Little Willie was silent for a long time before he spoke. "But what about fishing and the rodeo and turkey dinners? Doesn't he want to do those things anymore?" Grandfather shut his eyes and tears rolled down his cheeks and disappeared into his beard. "I'm sure he does," Doc Smith said, putting her arm around Little Willie. "It must be something else." Little Willie stared at the floor. I'll find out what's wrong and make it better. You'll see. I'll make Grandfather want to live again." And Searchlight barked loudly. All right, so that is the first chapter of Stone Fox. And so what we learned is there's something wrong with Grandfather, and we don't really know what that is. Now, if you read the back of the book, you'll find out there's something wrong with Grandfather that they end up needing a little bit of money to pay for. So that's what Little Willie's plan is. He's going to take Searchlight, and he's going to try to win a dog sled race. So if you think you'd be interested in hearing this story about how Willie attempts to save his grandfather's life with the help of his friend Searchlight, you should definitely check out the book Stone Fox by John Reynolds Gardner from the Parkade Media Center. All right, guys, I will see you later. Keep reading.